Welcome to the Retired Athlete Mentality Podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories of former collegiate athletes who have transitioned from the competitive world of college sports to the grueling but rewarding world of endurance racing. Each episode, we bring on athletes who have gone from courts, fields, and tracks to marathons, triathlons, and even ultras. School's back in session. Welcome to the show. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Retired Athlete Mentality Podcast. I'm your host, Jamal from Running State University, and on this episode, we have Sam Cvetkovski from Buffalo State University. At Buffalo State, she played first base and catcher. While there, she was selected for the SUNY Athletic Conference All-Tournament Team, Capital One Academic All-District Team, and was a selectee for the Buffalo State Senior Scholar Athlete Award. After graduating, Sam became a data professional, but eventually traded the desk life for endurance training, mountain challenges, and coaching athletes. Today, she works with runners, ruckers, and outdoor athletes, helping them build strength, resilience, and confidence. Sam, let's talk about your retired athlete mentality. How have you been?
I've been good. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, of course. So to be fair, I did this with my first football player, but I am announcing that you are the first softball player on the podcast. So I want to congratulate you for paving the way for softball players to be on this podcast and transition from softball to endurance sports. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, for as little as we run, I think it's probably a little rare. So it makes sense.
Yeah, which is great that we found you so we can talk about it a little bit.
Cool. Awesome.
And so you went to Buffalo State, which is in New York, but where did you grow up and what did you start playing when you were a child?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually grew up in Buffalo, New York, right near that Canadian border. We always joke that we're basically more Canadian than like compared to New York City because it's so much closer. But yeah, I grew up in Buffalo, born and raised, and I ended up going to college at Buffalo State. It was kind of a weird scenario in the sense that I was like, I don't really know what I want to do after high school. I was a decent student. I played softball in high school and tournament, and we traveled around and did that whole thing. And I started just kind of like figuring out what it was that I wanted to be doing. And I ended up going to Buff State, talking to the coach there, and did a tour and met some of their players. And I remember I got in the car and I looked at my mom and I was like, I'm definitely going to go there. It's a Division III school. At the time, I was kind of like on the fence of should I start looking at a Division I versus Division III? But it really made sense. And I just fell in love with it when I stepped on campus there.
Yeah. And did you have other Division I and Division III schools that you were interested in?
I had done some of the tours around those schools and there wasn't really like any offers out there. I'll say that. It was something that I started to talk to certain coaches and as they were recruiting, but I realized that I didn't want to go to school and sit the bench that freshman, sophomore year. And for me, it was more about getting in there, continuing to play, and then figuring out school at the same time.
Yeah, that's definitely a tough decision when you're a high schooler getting ready to go into college, where you're either going to play a lot more or, sit on the bench and develop and then, potentially play, your junior and senior year. So it sounded like you chose that I want to play now type decision, which is a lot of fun for you because you get to do that for 4 years, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so would you say that softball was your main sport growing up, or did you play other sports?
I predominantly played softball, but I actually have a background in martial arts as well. And throughout high school, I taught karate at the studio that was pretty close to my house to mostly kids. And so it was mostly between softball and karate back and forth. I tried volleyball, but I did not enjoy it. I always joke about this with people, and I think I would have liked volleyball, but I was really bad at serving because I just wanted to hit the ball really hard. And the coach would always make us run laps if we missed served. And the one practice I looked at her and I was like, this isn't helping me get better at serving. And so she was just started having me do push-ups instead. And I was very out of line for that. But in that moment I was like, well, I'm just gonna go like do my thing. I played in my backyard with my cousins and brothers like growing up and playing football, baseball, everything. And so I always say like I didn't play a ton of organized other sports, but we were running around all the time. We got grounded to the outside for the summer.
Yeah, and I mean, travel sports as a high schooler, was big when I was growing up. And
Mhm.
softball, I saw two sisters of mine do softball and a little bit of travel, and it can get pretty busy when you do that type of athletics as a high schooler.
Yeah, for sure. And like upstate New York and what like where I'm from, Western New York and Pennsylvania and Ohio have a really big travel softball community, or at least did when I was playing. And so we were going to tournaments probably every weekend over the summer, if not every other
Yeah.
weekend, and playing 6 or 7 games in those 2 days. And so it was a lot for sure.
Yeah, and that's, as a high schooler, did you play catcher and first base growing up?
For travel, I was mostly catching, and so
Okay.
and there was exactly that, like, those weekends you would catch 6 or 7 games if you were the only
Exhausting.
one, and, like, I look back at that now and I think about it, about those Sundays, because the way most softball tournaments work, because of the condensed time, is that if you win, you just keep playing. Like, you get
Hmm.
an hour and then you go again, and there was this one weekend, I think we played 4 games in a row on, like, a 80, 90-degree weekend
Oh yeah.
and just caught all 4 of those games, and I loved it, but y again, I look back and it's like, "Oh, that was a long day."
Yeah, but it allowed you to go to Buffalo State and play. So you played catcher and first base at Buffalo State. Was it mostly catcher when you got there?
I actually predominantly played first base when I was at Buff
Okay.
State. My teammate Lindsay was a year ahead of me, and she's a phenomenal player, and she took on most of the catching duties there.
Yeah, and so first base is a pretty important position.
Mhm.
Did you feel that you got the opportunity to play a lot early on, like you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was interesting because I I feel like we were kinda, like, figuring out where I would best fit, and I loved catching. It was my favorite position to play to this day. You see the field, you're kind of in charge of what's going on.
Yeah.
But at that time, again, like, Lindsay, she was awesome, and so I can't remember exactly how it happened. I think my freshman year, though, we would travel to Florida for, I think, 10 days or so to play, like, a spring season because New York.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had, like, a really good week when we were out there at bat, and so I started filtering in some DH style position, and then eventually made it more into the field from there.
Nice. And you kind of hinted at it, but can you talk about what it's like playing college sports in, upstate New York?
It was I mean, honestly, so is Buff State's a public school, part of the SUNY system, and what's
Yeah.
actually cool, and everyone asks like, "Oh, was it Division 1, Division 2, 3?" And I'm always really proud about playing a Division 3 sport because you have to do all of the same things, and you don't really get a whole lot more. Like, you don't get
Yeah.
any more from it. But in New York, especially, like, our season, we were in the gym practicing so much because of the weather, and I remember sometimes the we would start to be able to go outside, and our coach is like, "You have to wear pants and a sweater." We're like, "No, it's so warm out." She's like, "Well, yeah, when it's 0 degrees and now it's 35 degrees, it feels a lot warmer, but it's still cold." But I mean, it was incredible. The SUNY system is pretty competitive, at least when I was there, and like, the New York, like, that whole area had just had really good competition throughout.
Yeah, and so it sounds like, you had a really good time there. You made some all tournament teams. What was it like coming to the final season of softball?
Yeah, it was not easy, that's for sure. So, kind of I mean, a story that I think doesn't quite hit everyone all the time. During my sophomore year, our coach, she was battling cancer,
Oh,
and ended up not making it. And so our junior, senior year, like transition was kind of, it was just different, right? One of our assistant coaches came on, incredible coach, took over the team. And so, one of the main reasons I joined was because of just like that coach's passion for the school and the sport. And so it was just like a journey in its own throughout that time there. But senior year, we struggled. So we made playoffs my junior or maybe sophomore year. It must have been sophomore year. Didn't junior year, and then we ended up not making it my senior year, and like we just missed it.
mm,
And we didn't know it was our last, so we had to win like our last 2 games or something, but there was other games going on too, so it was the whole like
yeah.
puzzle that had to be put
Yeah.
together. And we won the games that we had to win, and I remember being told though that the other game, like, it was like a crazy switch, and the one team that had no business winning had won,
Yeah.
and it was just we were away too, and so it was just like just the team was there, right? And so I just
Yeah.
remember walking into the outfield, like, after the game and just, like, sitting on the ground, and I was like, "Well, I don't know what to do." Like, because it was just it felt like a loss, right? Of just, like, you do something for so long, and that's just, like, your sense of self and purpose and, like, who you were. And the crazy part is we had, like, 2 more games after that because we still had,
Yeah.
like, non-league games that we were
Hmm.
playing in anticipation of going to playoffs after it. And, like, so the second to last games, I guess, were the ones where I really just was just like, I don't know, like, it was a very overwhelming just, like, sense of loss. And then those last 2 games were bittersweet almost because you're just like, well, I'm just gonna play, and everyone got to play those games, which was cool because we had some seniors that maybe wouldn't have played otherwise.
Yeah.
And I remember after that, me and one of my best friends, we had a project due for like our practicum class we had that night at midnight, and we finished our games and we walked over to the library and we were there for like 6 hours finishing that project to get it done. And like that
Wow.
was the end of like my career playing softball, was
Yeah.
doing a math class.
Oh man. But it sounds like
Yeah.
there were good memories,
Mm,
good team bonding, really good, motivation behind it. And so
yeah.
it sounds like although it didn't finish the way you wanted, there was still at least some closure by the end of it.
For sure. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, and then so we talked about this a little bit, but after graduating, you went into, the workforce.
Mhm.
What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so after Buff State, I went to grad school in North Carolina for a 1-year analytics program. It was like a 9 to 5, just grind it out basically. You get your master's, and
Mm,
that the school or the program I went through is very good at helping you get set up with a job following that. And so right after I left Buffalo State or finished there in 20, was that 13, that summer moved to North Carolina, did the 1-year program there, and then I drove back to Buffalo for a week and flew out to LA to start my new job. And so it was very quick. And honestly, it was great, like, to start and just have something to kinda go with. I had majored in applied math with a minor in coaching and then had my analytics master's degree. And so it just everything flowed. It wasn't something I necessarily had planned on doing originally, like, when I got into
mm,
that master's program, it was kind of like "Oh, this seems cool. Makes sense, let's do it." Again, not really sure what I wanted to do, and then jumped into a consulting job, where I was traveling, I think, 3 weeks on, 1 week off for a few days a week every time, and it just felt like, not that it, like, filled a hole, but it was like, okay, I was doing something and moving all the time. Like, it was go, 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 and very high energy in a sense of
yeah.
that it wasn't a whole lot of downtime.
Yeah, and so that I mean, applied math to data analytics, that's a natural transition. So it seemed like at least for the education to work transition that didn't look too bad, but
Mhm.
how did that transition from college sports to work life balancing with fitness? How did that look for you?
Not great. Not great because I
Yeah.
mean, let's be honest, like you get out of school, I was in a job where we were traveling on
Mhm.
other companies like money to eat, be there, you know, work obviously, but I was always in like a city and we would have a good time. And so when I look back at it, it was I did the whole thing where it was like, okay, I'll go to the gym. I'm gonna get a workout in here and there during the week. On the weekends, I'm gonna go really, really hard and I don't know, sweat a lot and
Yeah.
then go party at night, right? Like
Yeah.
I moved to LA. I'd never been here before moving here. And it was just, it was fun. And fitness, like it was always important because I wanted to be in the gym and do the thing, but it was more of kind of balancing out everything else I was doing too. It wasn't necessarily like a priority in the sense that it was there because I wanted to go have some pizza and beers that night, so I was
Mhm.
gonna go for a run that morning, and so that was kinda like the balance of everything, and arguably not a great balance, but again, it was fun, and met a lot of friends and different, like, avenues of meeting people that way, but it was just, it wasn't about fitness, it was about not having fitness and making sure that I had something there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a tough thing when you get straight into the workforce and then you go to a completely new city,
Mhm,
LA being that city, and LA is an amazing city where there's lots to do, and then you're
mhm,
traveling, and so it's a whole nother thing that you have to get used to and just work in.
for sure.
So what would you say, how long did it take you to finally start getting into this running thing?
So crazy. So I moved to LA in 2014. So what is this? 12 years ago now. Um, I would say that I always tell people this and they laugh, but I actually hated running for most of my life. And
Yeah,
I think I hinted to this earlier, right? It was always a punishment. It was
yeah.
always you did something wrong, so run sprints or it was always a negotiation with myself of like, I can go run a few miles and then I'll go eat whatever I want tonight. Like that was always running. It always had some sort of um, weight to it almost. And so over the pandemic, so 2020, I didn't have any workout equipment at home, and I was trying to find stuff, and being in LA, everything was like, closed, and so there was no real gyms open, and I was talking to a
Mhm.
buddy, and he was like, "Hey, check out this, company, Go Ruck, and they do, like, rucking backpacks and sandbags." And I was like, "Okay, it's kind of expensive, but I'll just you know what? Whatever, like, I'll do this, it makes sense, I can do it at home." I can make my own workouts. Cool, sounds good. Eventually got a barbell later on, which was great. But,
That's great, yeah.
but, but, but I started doing that, and we saw that they do these like challenges, and one of them was like a 12-hour team challenge. And I had talked to him, and I said something along the lines of, "I think I could do this. Do you want to go do it?" And so we ended up signing up for one of them. He ended up dropping a little bit pretty early on. He was dealing with some health stuff, but I got through it. I met some really cool people, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of fun." Like it was a grind. It hurt. It kind of sucked at times, but
Mhm.
it gave me a little bit of like that, like one, a sense of community, and then two, just being able to go and do something that wasn't, just in a gym. And eventually I started doing more of those events, some of their like longer ones, met a really good group of friends through it. And I ended up meeting this guy, Greg, who owns his own company, Green Beret Fitness, and they run rucking races. And so for like anyone that doesn't know, rucking is really just like a backpack and you add weight to it. It comes from the military, but it's becoming more and more popular just for like walking with weight and like now racing with it. And so he puts these races on that take place more in the mountains. So like Go Ruck's a very city-based event and team focused. These Greenberry Fitness events are, solo in the mountains, ranging from anywhere from like 5 miles to upwards of like 50, 100 miles. And so I ended up signing up for one of his races. I couldn't make it. I had like a family thing I had to go home for. And then I was, of course, talking to a friend, and he was just like, you should just sign up for his other one. It's the 68-mile race through the Ocala National Forest. It's flat, and you don't have to go that fast to finish. Like, you have 24 hours to finish it. And so, I'm texting with this guy on like Thanksgiving or something after having like tons of food, some wine, hanging out. I was like, you know what? That does sound like a good idea. He's got a sale going on. Let's do it. And so I ended up signing up for that. I did that in January of 20, I don't know, 2023 maybe. And I ended up finishing. And it was arguably to this day one of the hardest things I've done. Like, it
Wow.
was just like, I planned to do it with my friend, and he made it maybe 30 something miles. And we ended up splitting up because he was just having a hard time. He's like, just go ahead. And I was like, I'm literally in this forest alone. Is the middle of the night. There's bears out here for sure. I've never done anything like this. And it was, believe it or not, in Florida, it was, I think temperatures were touching like 20 degrees. So there was like
Wow.
frost everywhere. It was
Yeah.
It was the coldest I've ever been to. And so that started like, I would say more of that endurance kind of like, oh, like this is like a different feeling. And so I did that event twice. I ended up getting kind of a bum ankle from it the one year. Just like I think I twisted it like pretty early on. Continued and still did the whole thing with like a twisted ankle. Finished, and then I reached out to this guy who I met at one of the Go Rec events as well, who does ultra marathon coaching. And that's like, when I had met him, he had said, I was like, oh, what do you do? He's like, well, I coach like ultra runners. And I was like, what is that? Like, I had no idea, right? Like, I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like anything over a marathon and they run. I was like, that's insane, right? I would
Yeah.
never do that. But he has a military background, and
Yeah.
so he knows he knows rucking, and he knows long distances. And I was like, I'm training for this 100-mile ruck. Like, that was my goal. It's like this 100-mile ruck race. And so I started working with him, and ended up then in 2024, it was like Labor Day weekend was the race. Ended up finishing 82 miles in like the backcountry Idaho, Wyoming mountains
Wow.
before we called it. And was super fun. Did a bunch of that over the time. And eventually he was like, hey, what, like, maybe like, I don't know, maybe we'll just do some runs right now, like in the mountains. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. And so eventually, like, honestly, in like a very short time frame of just like finishing that ruck, like that big ruck, into him being like, why don't you just go for some run hikes now, put the ruck away. We always joke like he turned me to the dark side of like ultra
Yeah.
running from that. And I was like, because he's like, you know how to move over a long period of time. Like, let's make it a little bit faster now. I was like,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, sounds good. And so, and I think like to like circle this all back, like, how do you get into running from like being like, I hate running, I don't want to do it, I use it as a form of punishment, I use it as purely a form of exercise, to being something that I do like now that I just like absolutely love. And I think really what it was just slowing down, right? And
Mm.
not just being 100% all the time. Like, most of my runs now are spent in a very low, like, aerobic space where, yes, do I do speed days or thresholds or hill days? Of course. But
Mm-hmm.
most of the time out there, it's just like, hey, go have fun for 3 or 4 hours and go
Yeah.
see some cool spaces. And like, that was just such a transition for me, and how that evolved over the time.
Yeah, which is pretty wild. So it sounds like you somewhat, to an extent, unless we didn't talk about it, you kind of skipped the like the progression of like 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, then ultra, and you skipped all of that and then went straight to an ultra ruck, which is like, and I think What's the weight? Is it 15, 25 pounds?
It's
Are we talking?
I think that one was 25 pounds, and then you add all your water and
Yeah,
food
your
that you have to carry. Yeah.
life
Yeah,
support.
it's life support. Yeah.
Yeah, so it ends up being like 35 pounds by the end of it, and you went 82, you said miles, not kilometers?
82 miles,
Yeah.
and I think like something like 18 or 16 or 18,000 feet of elevation gain in that time.
That's
Yeah.
wild. Yeah,
Yeah.
you completely went from 0 to 100. And you might even say negative because like you said, you didn't like running, you only did it because you had to, and so you kind of
Mhm.
went from below 0 to just like full speed ahead, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and, like, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of, like, bases in between
Yeah,
there, right?
of
Like, I'm
course,
hitting
yeah.
longer distances throughout, but it is true, it's like, I think the last, like, road race I ran it was so long ago, I couldn't even tell you. It was a half
Yeah,
marathon, and my friend and I signed up for it thinking we were gonna like, train for it.
yeah,
He was a friend from the gym, like, one of the guys, like, we would just go hard and hang out, and we went out the night before, 'cause I think it was, like, Cinco de Mayo or something, like,
yeah,
something so silly, and I think we just were playing chicken until the
yeah,
next morning because we had to get up at, like, 5 AM and go
yeah.
run this, and he's like, "Well, we don't have to." I was like, "No, but we don't have to." But we were just playing the whole time back and forth. We were out, and I was like, "Alright, I guess I'll pick you up at 5 AM. See you then." He's like, "Okay." And so I did, and then we got there, and we're like, "Why are we like, what are we doing?" And again, played chicken, I think, the whole time too, because that was the fastest I think I've ever run a half marathon at
Oh
that
my
time
god.
because we were just both like didn't want to stop. And
Yeah.
so but yes, I haven't run probably like I haven't run like a proper road marathon at this point or you know, I guess where most people would likely hit that maybe first.
Yeah, and so you kind of talked a little bit about it, but was there so you didn't just go from 0 to running. Like what was that train up between at least when you decided to start training for this to,
Yeah.
start doing some of these races?
For sure. Yeah. So that again, that 80-mile ruck ended over Labor Day weekend. So what, September 24. And it was so this whole time was a big transition point. So I finished that race. A day or two later flew back to LA. And 2 days after that, maybe my entire team and myself all got laid off from the
Wow.
company I was at. So, and it wasn't necessarily, I always say this, like, you see the signs, right? So it
Mhm.
wasn't necessarily a big surprise. The surprise was that I had been in the mountains for moving for 40 hours, came back to reality, and then it was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And so it was it was just like, all right, well, this is different. Then and this is the only reason this is important is because so I had stayed on for I think 2 more weeks after that, just helping
Mm.
with transitions and such. But there is a for the I think because you have an endurance podcast, a lot of people know this, but there's the Barkley Marathons, which again, for those that don't know, Barkley Marathons it's an ultra race. It's about 100 miles. It's what, 5 loops of
Yep.
a marathon course basically through the Tennessee mountains led by Laz Lake. There's a whole
Mhm.
backstory behind it, and
Yeah.
it's like the tough it and like you can't use
Yep.
GPS. It's all like
Mhm.
map and compass.
Yep.
Anyways, they run the Barkley Fall Classic every fall, which is a like entry level, right? Is like the baby Barkley. And my friend, he was like, "Hey, check this out." It's like the Barkley Fall Classic, and that happened, it's a few weeks after everything else had happened. And I was like, "Well, that looks super fun. I know what the Barkleys are. Like, let's just go." Like I have no commitments right now, right? Like
Yeah.
I can get on a plane and go and do this. And so they had filled their wait list up. And they posted on like their Facebook page, like, if anyone can come, like we have open spaces, just email the race director
Wow.
and we'll let you in. So I emailed the guy, I was like, it's 3 days, I think, before the race. And I said, I have a flight ready to book. I just need the commitment or the confirmation that I can come." And he's like, "Yep, you're in." And so my friend
Oh
did
my
the same
God.
thing. And so we flew in to Nashville and drove out, like, we got in that Friday. Race was Saturday. And so this was really cool because I had, like, no running really background, right, at this
Mm,
point. Is like mostly the rucking, like, not that I didn't run, but it was mostly like rucking in the mountains. But this course is very much known for like its elevation. And so it's a
yeah.
lot of hiking. And what's really cool about the Fall Classic is you can either complete like the marathon, and I air quote the marathon, the 50K, because they are definitely longer than that if you like
Yeah.
truly map it out. But you once you get to the marathon point, as long as you make the time cut, you can decide to just be done, or you can go and try to attempt to finish the 50K. And like
Mm,
the catch of it all is that if you attempt the 50K and don't make it in time, like their cutoff time, then you actually get a DNF instead of like
yeah.
getting the marathon finish. So like for a lot of people, that's like a big weight of like, ooh, do I want just the finish or do I want to like try and push myself? And for when I went into this, like at this point, like, where I was at just overall in life, I was just like, "I literally have nothing to lose. Like,
Nothing.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna go." And, it was so much fun. I actually met some people, like, I'm connected to now that live in LA, which is crazy that I met them there,
Yeah.
but, like, the climbing I had climbing legs, like, I was planning on climbing with a Ruck all the time, so, like, having
Hmm.
no weight on my back, I was like, "Oh, this is kinda nice." Um, I was terrible at everything downhill and flat because
Mm.
I didn't know how to run well. But I ended up finishing the 50K, and, like, that kind of, like, just gave me, like, this spark of just, like, it was really fun. It felt like an adventure. For that the Fall Classic, you can't use GPS or anything either, it's still
Mm,
map it's definitely more accessible in the sense, like, they have some small aid stations,
yeah.
and so, I kinda got that feel of, "Okay, like, this was fun, like, I wonder what else I can do." And so, the training difference, like, what happened was, I took after that, I think we took some time off of just, like, giving the legs a break. It was a big build, like, to that 100 miler, like, I was doing, 20-mile days pretty frequently, mm, or on the weekends leading up to that 100-mile ruck, just trying to get, like, my legs ready to go, just, like, big days out, and so I'd taken a little time off, got back in, started just, like, general strength, rebuilding the legs up, and I I I don't know, I saw some race of, like I was like, "Hey, there's a 50K in January, like, could I do that?" Right? Like, that was my I asked my coach, I was like, "Could I do it?" And he's like, "You could definitely do it," like, so we started actually, like, building running legs up for that, and so that was, like Barkley Fall Classic, I always joke, is actually my first it's actually my first, entry on Ultra signup,
Oh,
which
nice.
is crazy, like, because everything else was through, like, all these smaller companies,
Yeah.
and so, like, that's my very first line item on there is, like, Barkley Fall Classic, and then it's, like, this 50K.
Yeah.
And so, I would say the difference in the training, it was really just, covering a little bit more ground because it was more about always like, hey, go out for 2 to 3 hours.
Mm,
It wasn't necessarily like, hey, go cover this much in this much time. It was just more like, okay, now we're doing this much time, but it looks a little bit different. And starting to play with like being able to run downhill and then go straight into an uphill climb and things like that. And so, the transition wasn't necessarily in my head, it wasn't like a crazy difference. It was just more about at that point, like, so I guess early last year, it was just really about learning and still learning just how to run better.
yeah, and so it sounds like, over the past couple years is when you've really started to,
Mhm.
get serious about this ultra running.
Mhm.
Is it something that you find difficult to make time for? Because like you mentioned, some of these runs are 2 to 3 hours. How does
Mhm.
that look for you?
It's better now. So after, everything when my last job had happened, I I started, like, interviewing for other jobs and just nothing was feeling good and feeling right. And the coach I actually was training under, him and I had talked previously about coming on and doing some work with him and starting to coach under his company. It's always something I wanted to get back into. Like, I have a lot of one-off experience of doing coaching and in the fitness space, taught karate for most of my life, and at that time, I was like, "I'm training for this thing, work's kind of crazy, I can't do that, like, all these things at once," and I always say that, this layoff, like, gave me the shove I needed to take that leap, and so for me now, I predominantly do one-on-one coaching, and a lot of it is remote, which is nice for, like, my time, I would say. I do have in-person as well,
Hmm.
one-on-one, and then I coach also at, like, a group fitness gym, and so when I look at my time, it's very different now, right? And so it's a lot easier for me to find that balance in the sense that, you know, my hours are very different. So if I
Right.
want to go for a run at 10 AM, I'm probably free to do so, and then the rest of my work just shifts around that.
And so is that the Omni athlete training program? Is that the whole coaching gig?
Correct, yeah, Omni Athlete Training is the company I work and coach under.
Okay. And how did you how long have you been coaching?
Yeah, so I've been with Omni Athlete since, I would say, January, February 2025, so a little over a year now.
And what would you say the focus of Omni is?
So Omni, it's super interesting because we work with all types of athletes, and when we say athlete, it really means anyone that moves their body. Like if
Mhm.
you're doing something with your body, you're an athlete, and we take the very human first approach, and that is something that I think is so important in this space right now because with AI, I mean, let's be honest, AI can probably write a pretty good program,
Yeah.
but and there's so many influencers out there at this point that are trying to just feed you the same information over and over again, and we feel like we relate to them. But what we're trying to do is like really keep the human at the forefront of it because at the end of the day, like a computer is not going to know how you're feeling, what is happening in your life, or the things that, make you you. And that's what we like to focus on. For myself, I work with a wide range of athletes as well. I do have quite a few people that are rucking, some for competitive, and others that just want to do their thing and be better and healthier. I have a few that do self supported style hikes. So, someone finished, I think it was the Wonderland Trail last year, which is
Mm,
100 miles around Mount Rainier.
wow.
And we got work together to train her for that so she could do that on her own for 10 days. Others are, runners, others are just general want to stay healthy for their life and be able to do the things they want to do. So yeah, I think it's really like to boil it back down, it's just like working with somebody, like this isn't, this isn't like a templated program, and I think that's such a big thing, is that I can have 2 people, and I do have 2 people training for the exact same race right now, and their programs, while they progress probably similar, are very different because they have
Yeah.
different needs, they have different, you know, goals, they have different purposes of what they're doing this for, and, like, that's just such an important part to us.
Yeah, that's super cool, and I like that you highlighted that you have the same person, the two different people training for the same race, but their training plans are different because
Mhm.
obviously it's two different people.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
know, one, and I'm making this up, but one could have a full-time job, family, and then the other could be, you know, a single person, younger,
Mhm.
with a completely different life. And so I'd really like to emphasize that, like, yes, AI can make a plan, but like you said, the people
Mhm.
that coach can help you, you know, if you are someone that's struggling to put like a plan together. So that's really cool.
For sure. Yeah, it's really about that relationship. Like that's what coaching is at the end of the day, and I think for any like former college athlete that had a good experience, they know that their coach was probably the reason it was so good. What is the one cycling around now of it was the women's college basketball coach when she got in her player's face.
Yeah,
And like
yeah,
when you look at
Maryland.
the picture, it looks terrible, right?
Yeah,
But when you actually know what's happening and like if you've listened to those post interviews and she's like, no, I know what she needed in the moment. And we have
yeah,
such a good relationship that I could tell her exactly what she needed to hear. And so, like, I think that, and they've done, like, most people have done a really good job of, like, understanding that.
yeah,
But, like, without that relationship, without that connection, like, you could put again into some bot and say, hey, I need to skip the next 3 days because I'm not feeling good. Like,
mhm.
some, like, I would have so many more questions for them of just like, "What's going on? Like, have you
Yeah,
been sleeping? How have you been eating?" And, like, a bot can help with that too, but, like, to really know the person and, like, just, like, dig down into, like, why do we need to take a break the next few days is
mhm.
just it's just so important to them.
Yeah, that's super cool, and I was actually watching that Maryland game live.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, they lost, but I believe that player, after that talk, did go on and score, like, the next 2 points, but it's really cool that that got
Yeah,
the virality that it did because of exactly what was going on and what we're talking about now, which is
absolutely.
great. And so you've talked a little bit about coaching. You've talked about your life when it comes to how you've gotten to where you are. So let's talk about what you're currently training for, which is, I believe, a 200 miler. Can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I know we talked a little bit about like the racing I've done. I think 2025 was really cool because I kind of started dabbling in different distances to see what it was like. So I'd done a few 50Ks, I had a 100K. I did my first 100 miler in San Diego June last year, which was just a fascinating experience. We'd have to talk about that probably a whole nother time.
Yeah, yeah, we should.
And what was crazy and, like, this is important to the 200 is what was crazy about San Diego was that I went into it and was like, "I know I can do 100 miles." Like, there was no question in my head about
Yeah.
it. I knew it was gonna be hard. I knew there's gonna be difficulties to it, but I had no doubt that I was like, "I can get 100 miles done." And so that, like, that was its own thing. Later of last year, I did 2 backyard ultras, which is every hour on the hour, you run 4.2 miles. You have to make it back in the hour. You have to start on the hour. Pretty simple. I ran Little Dogs, which is the same course as Big Dogs, which
Mm,
the, like, backyard ultra championships take place on,
yeah.
and I had an absolute blast. It felt like such a different race. It was just really cool. I met a really cool people. I did it basically self-supported of just like didn't have a crew. And
Yeah.
because I had run Berkeley Fall Classic right before that too, the month before. And I just felt like so free. Is whereas like when I ran San Diego, I just didn't I don't know. There's just something missing from it. Like I think I just had too many expectations. Like it was just this whole like learning experience. But towards the end of this last year, like I just kind of felt like, oh, I'm just like running, like everything's so fun. Like everything
Yeah.
felt fun in the last few months. And so for this year, I have my goals set or my A race set as a 200. It's the Machete Morritos 200, and so it's a 20-mile loop course. I think it's got 4,500 feet of gain per loop, and
Wow.
it's a fascinating course though because there's a bunch of flat sections and there's
Mhm.
4 big climbs, and
Yeah.
so you're just hitting like these these ridic like, the first climb, you're like I did the trail preview a few weeks ago and, like, just
Yeah.
kinda, like, cruised, and I was like, "This is so fun." But the first climb is like this, it's a tough climb, it's steep, you get to run down it, it's great. Then you hit this flat ground, and it's just you're just like, "Okay, it's flat, I know it's coming." And then these second 2 climbs, they're the Molcajete 2.0 and 3.0 is what they call them, and they're you're scrambling a lot, like,
Yeah.
I think you hit the one, I forget which one, and maybe it's both of them. You hit 1,000 feet in a half mile
Oh
of
my
climbing,
god.
and then you go down it, like, you go down and you hit the
Yeah.
same going down, so it is just, it's brutal. And then the last one, I like, because then you again, you hit some flat road and you're like, "Oh, I can just run here, this is awesome."
Yeah.
And then you hit the last climb, and I told 1 or 2 people this, I was like, "That last climb is like my bread and butter climb though, because it's steep, but it's just like, it's at this point where you're like, "I could run this, but I'm not going to run it because I need to preserve over time." But it
Yeah.
is just like, it's this beautiful climb, and then you drop back down to, like, the campground. Anyway, that's the goal for this year, and so that's end of October into, November 1st, 2nd, and so over, like, the course of this summer, I'll be hitting, like, a few other just, like, checkpoint kind of races. I
Yeah.
have, like, 100 or so, like, 1 or 200 milers in there just to kinda get the legs ready, but really it's just a ton of building and, you know, the goal is to hopefully, well, I say San Diego 100's at the end of this month. Though my plan originally was to run it, but I think we're gonna maybe run about half of it, take a DNF, and then I'm
Yeah.
actually gonna be pacing at Cocodona after that.
Oh, cool.
So it's like I'm still gonna be getting miles in,
Yeah.
and I get to go do this pretty cool course with people. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like I'm stoked. The thing, like I said, 100 miles, I know I can finish, and I knew it before going into it. A 200, I I honestly have no idea. I think my legs can do it. I believe I can mentally do it, but the hardest parts will likely be figuring out how to take care of myself, right? And, like, having a
Yeah.
crew for that, but, like, sleeping, eating, doing the things that seem so simple, but will make or break at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's wild. That's that's a lot. Because I know like there are some milestones for 100 like time wise. Some
Mhm.
people like to get it in like 24 hours. Some people like a little bit more.
Yeah.
But 200 is just like a whole nother world.
And every 200 out there is so different,
Yeah.
like, because you just cover so much, right? Like, and
Yeah.
again, this is a loop course, which is also has its pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
1, the course, but 2, the course, like, that makes it its own
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it's definitely one of those that feels like in reach but out of reach and, like, just scary enough to make it like, I don't know what's gonna happen, you know?
Yeah. So you've made it essentially from college softball to essentially training for a 200 to do it at the end of the year, close to the end of the year.
Mhm.
What do you feel that you've taken from, your time playing college sports to now? Do you feel like you've left that person behind, or do you feel that a lot of that person is still in you that's driving you to push
Mm.
through some of these races?
I think there's a lot of lessons from that time, and
Mm,
there's a lot of the core pieces as well. The few that come to mind, I would say I'll use the story from San Diego as an example here because there was this point during that race, I was just feeling like garbage. I had really hard time with my gut, and I, like, felt this, like, pressure to perform, which I had really
mm,
never experienced before because when I was playing softball, I batted, like, 3, 4, 5
yeah.
area, and there's always pressure, like, at
Yeah.
the end of a game, and I loved it. Like,
Yeah.
I absolutely, like, was so calm, cool every single time and was frequently able to produce when I needed to. And so when I had experienced this, like, in San Diego, just this, like, unknown pressure to perform, which was non-existent anyway, it was
Mhm.
really weird because, like, I go back and now I think about back to that where it's just like, "Hey, you've been in these moments so many times, right? Like, go back to that state. Like, what was that like? Why is this different?" And so I still utilize that. The others being, like, in terms of, like, from then to now, just lessons. I mentioned the coach, like, my coach that had got me onto the team there. She always would say, like, these few different things, and one of them was really about just showing up, right? And it's so simple, like, she would even say it about our classes, like, maybe not the best thing to say to a college kid, but, like, she was like, "If you show up to a class, you will get a C, like, there's no way you don't pass
Mm,
if you just show up." And she was like, so she's like, "Take that with all of this, like, the hardest part often is just getting there," right? And
yeah.
we always say that with the gym, with certain things, like, the biggest barrier for people is thinking about it too much or thinking about picking a weight up off the ground. Like, I joke with clients all the time, like, if you look at it longer, it just is gonna get heavier, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just one of those things, like, if you can just show up for yourself in that moment, like, that's step 1, and you've probably, like, covered, 80% of the things you need to do by being there. And then I think the last is, she would always say this too, of just like, don't waste it today. And like just being able to live in the moment you're in. And obviously, like the situation she was in, she was trying to share that with us as well.
Yeah.
But it was just like, it's just like, why wait? Right. Like, it's important to work and have your job and do these things because it supports everything else that we need to do to live and function. But
Yeah.
it's like, if you want to go and try something, like, there's no point in waiting till tomorrow or next week or, when you're feeling better to try and do it. It's like if you want to run a marathon, like get started. Like that's you just gotta like don't even start tomorrow. Like start tonight. Like go for a walk.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're there. You've got an opportunity. Like take it and don't waste your time. Like doing things you don't want to be doing.
Yeah, that's super special that you've taken that, from
Mhm.
college to all these years, 14, 15 years later. As we close, that was a good pointer. But what, personally, what type of advice would you give to someone transitioning from college sports to, maybe endurance training, whether it's, right after college or even further on?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, and I think this is a trap that we can fall into, especially right out of college. And it's probably better now than like when you or I were there, but like
Yeah.
making sure you're recovering and taking rest days
Hmm.
because like I remember going 7, 10 days in a row just thinking that was totally fine. Like,
Yeah.
and now I'm like, savor my rest days. I love them. But I
Yeah.
would say definitely first is like, yes, rest and recover is actually probably more important than everything else you do. And then in the same line of that, it's like find something you enjoy doing, but you don't need to just burn out doing it either. Take it in the waves. Like some days are going to be harder than others, but not every day has to be hard.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. I myself at this age need to prioritize recovery, but and throw a little stretching in there as
Uh-huh.
well. Yeah.
It's I'll share this one that was shared with me. It's like about like so I've been particularly bad about doing like corrective work, mobility, things like that,
Yeah.
probably until the last few months because like I just needed a kick in the ass to tell me like, hey, this is super important and I'm seeing the benefits of it. But he said, well, you brush your teeth every day, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the same thing as doing your mobility corrective stretching. Like
Yeah.
it's all preventative care. So.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely something that I will take in and try to remember is like, hey, brush your teeth, stretch,
Yes.
do it all.
Yep.
Well, Sam, this has been such a great conversation. Before we wrap up, where can people connect with you or follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. Instagram for sure. I think it's at Sam Strap. I'm sure it'll be in the notes.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I do have like a website and I do some blog posts on there as well after events. Ruck with Sam, RUCK with Sam.com. And then omniathletetraining.com. You can find like the Omni Athlete information as well.
Yep, all of that will be in the notes. I'll be sure to share that with everybody and
Awesome.
make sure that that we get that link up.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Jamal.
Of course, Sam, this has been amazing. Thank you for coming on the Retired Athlete Mentality podcast, and we will talk soon.
Bye.